So there's a small YouTube channel named Willie Tato, and he recently got a lot of dislikes on a video where apparently he was clickbaiting and is ignorant and doesn't know Jack and X, Y, and Z. Okay, I'm gonna cut the bull nuts here. I'll get straight to the point because apparently that's one of the things people criticized me for. And before I move on, please don't go out of your way to harass these people. They're simply doing what they think is right and is speaking their mind, and that's their First Amendment right. I'm also not a professional in any capacity, and everything I'm doing and saying here is just allegations and should be treated as such. However, I also have a First Amendment right, so with that being said, let's begin. First of all, I did not clickbait actually. I actually dove into the argument as to why I think MoistCritikal is a hypocrite and his moral values are inconsistent, leading me to believe that he thinks children can consent. I think that, and this is indeed a valid criticism, it's because I didn't right off the bat mention that he thinks that children can consent. The reason why this was the case, and it's entirely my fault here by the way, is because I started on that script like a month ago or so prior to that video. It was around the time where I was talking about Keemstar and how he's sucking up to Mr. Beast, and then somehow I drove that into the MoistCritikal thing somehow. I have no idea how that happened. And then when MoistCritikal dropped that video, I just went back to the old document, the one with the script that I didn't finish, and then I just didn't change the intro because I forgot. And for that, I severely apologize to everyone who they thought were misled. Now, although this isn't exactly a good counter-argument, I do have a counterpoint as to I would like to make with everyone. Jeez Louise, my English is bad right now. But I would have a point that I would like to make with the people that dislike the video. At the 12:20 mark, that's when I started to show the evidence of him saying it's okay for a 17-year-old kid to be involved in the medical experiments. And if we go to the audience retention graph, ooh, yeah, 8%. That's pretty low. Not even double digits. That tells me that people didn't stick around long enough to actually get to the part where I talk about my main opinion of why I think Mr. Moist thinks children can consent, as well as why I think he's a hypocrite. An additional reason as to why I took as long as I did to talk about the main opinion is because I wanted to establish a ground in which this conversation can be held. I can't just immediately say, oh, Mr. Moist is a hypocrite and he thinks children can consent. In order to make those arguments, I need to establish definitions, nuances, clear up all the fog in the ground, and make sure that there are things that we can all agree on, which is called common ground, in order to properly defend my claim. I can also see as to why it can be seen as clickbait. I only emphasized on kids can consent instead of additional hypocrisy claims, which I will now fix by changing the thumbnail from this to this. I'm not entirely sure if it'll do much because I also want to dramatize the entire thumbnail as well, so that way I can get the views. As people know, I really do want to get the views, but I also want to make valid arguments. But I also want to add an emphasis as to the purposes of this video, which leads me to my second point. I am doing this for views, of course. I want to make a brand off making coherent arguments as to why I think what is right and what is wrong in order to bring some justice into the content creation space. I want to be able to do what I enjoy doing, which is being a D1 yapper that talks about my opinions, but I want to do so in such a way where what I'm saying matters, and I can bring attention to things that I don't find many people paying attention to for a paycheck, of course. If this is a problem for you all, then I'm sorry, that's just how content creation goes. At the end of the day, everyone, and I mean everyone on this platform wants to make a living and get the bills paid without actually having to get a productive job. Although I carry that same sentiment, I want to at least be able to provide something new other than what I just consider to be lazy content through giving people a small yet substantial voice. That's why I have found one of the things I'm good at, which is bringing up completely random things that no sane person considers. And I just want to be able to, put something new out there because I don't see many people creating new arguments, being like better critics that are popular. And I just want to do something like that, because I have fun talking. So that's also one of the reasons why. It's because I want to make a living off of just talking about things and fostering a discussion that people can calmly and maturely talk things through in. Third, this one commenter who I will shout out, his name is Kato Chaotix, point out the flaws in my video, and although I replied to him, I would like to expand more on these things because I actually find this to be very respectable, and that's great that he's willing to tell me what I'm doing is wrong. The first point is something that I already covered earlier, referred to 5 minutes ago. The second point, I will watch MoistCritikal because I like to listen to him yap. He's really good background noise whenever I'm playing Minecraft and whatever. But just as he has the right to comment on my video, I have a right to voice my disliking towards MoistCritikal. I believe in separating art from artists. Why bash the people who enjoy the art when they don't know much about the artist? You do have a good word of advice. It's logical, but I won't take it simply because free will. I also need views. The third and fourth points are just irrelevant in my opinion. I can kind of see why it's relevant because I argued on the age of consent, but the whole topic revolved around the inconsistencies in MoistCritikal's values and morals in regards to medical procedures and transitioning, and how hard he really backpedaled because he got a lot of backlash, so he's more of a people pleaser, which is why I brought up the age of consent. And this shows that he's really trying to be a people pleaser, which I mentioned very early on, so you have no excuse there, and Mr. Moist needs to be held accountable because he says his morals come from his own personal beliefs and experiences, as he said. But he also says that he hasn't had a lot of experience in it, so why would he think that he's the right person to talk Sneeko out of these harmful thoughts, if that makes sense? You know what I mean? That means that even if he can't make a good argument about why it's not okay for kids to go through medical procedures relating to transitioning genders, or even why it's not okay to be a pedophile, this shows that his morals are weak and easily corruptible, which is not a good thing for obvious reasons. Someone of his status should not be that easily corruptible, or else if he works with the wrong people, that can affect the lives of his fans and other people, potentially other people, in some negative way that I don't know myself. But I do appreciate the fact that you bring it up. I should have made it more clear on what the premise was, and I really do apologize for that. And I'm really sorry, and I will try to make things clearer, like, in the future. And as for the debate, I don't see how that's relevant either, because debate or not, Mr. Moist's whole goal was to at least tell him why he's wrong and make a slightly convincing argument that would have at least Sneeko considering it. For your fifth point, I'm not entirely sure if you mean I'm being dumb for trying to clown on Mr. Moist here, or if I'm just being dumb in general, but we'll play ball with this anyways. Actually, you're not right here for three humongous reasons. One of them is that, according to Utah State Legislature, there's nothing here that even remotely permits this transfusion in the first place, unless Mr. Johnson's son is secretly married, which would then emancipate him from these requirements. Also, that little thing you see at the top, yeah, I had a stroke reading that too, but basically someone under the age of 18, which is the age of majority in Utah, can be considered a parent under certain circumstances, and that's when the minor can quote-unquote consent to the healthcare of the other minor that the said minor is taking care of, if that makes sense. I also do want to point out that there's a lot of sources varying in different opinions to this, and it's important to note to take these resources into account, but this is my piece of evidence I would like to present to the table. Number 2, that's blood transfusions, not plasma transfusions. What's the difference? I don't know. I didn't pay much attention in biology. But anyways, what Mr. Johnson had was a plasma transfusion, not a blood transfusion. And I really regret saying blood transfusion. It's a plasma transfusion, and I really apologize for the confusion there, and I should have made that more clear, and I'm very sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. I really appreciate it. But going back to the plasma transfusion thing, guess what the age of consent to plasma transfusions are in Utah? And finally, number 3, for this point right here, all of this goes out the window. None of this even matters because none of this is even relevant. This is allegedly an experiment to prolong Mr. Johnson's life. An experiment that Mr. Johnson allegedly publicly admits this ought to be, and therefore considered an experiment. This brings me back to my next point I made, where according to the Legal Information Institute, you can't consent to any science experiments unless you're the age of majority in Utah, which is 18. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about that point overall. 3 big reasons why you're kind of wrong there, but I really do appreciate that. I should have made it more clear that it's blood transfusion. It's plasma it is plasma transfusion. It is not blood transfusions, and I should have done something to clear that up more, but apparently I didn't, so my apologies for the miscommunication. Going back to your points, your 6th point actually does make sense, and you're right about that. It is wrong for me to compare the age of consent to the age of majority. There is indeed a clear difference there, and that was ignorant of me to actually compare the two together. However, that doesn't discredit my entire video. I hit more than I missed, but that substantially weakened my argument because the age of sex is the age where you can legally have sex, whereas the age of majority is where you're legally considered an adult, and the age of consent is the age in which someone can consent to something. And for that miscommunication and poor argumentation, I sincerely apologize. Your 7th point isn't really expanding on anything, so I'll expand on it for you. The reason why it's dumb for me to call Mr. Moist a dipstick for just describing grooming rather than saying grooming is dumb is because he's explaining to Sneeko why it's wrong to groom people. But using the term grooming is not good because then it just complicates things further. And you're sort of right there, I guess. It's better to dumb it down for someone as stupid as a pedo supporter. But it's better to just outright say grooming is bad, because then it would be something that someone like Sneeko would understand. Grooming is bad, and if Sneeko argues against that, it would be a pretty bad look. And also because grooming is wrong because it's predatory. And also Sneeko is terminally online, so that wouldn't even really matter. It's also important to be concise and use correct terminology when you're trying to persuade someone, which really gets rid of your fourth point where, oh, it's not a debate, Mr. Moist is just trying to persuade Sneeko. Yeah, that's what a debate is. Whether you wanted to or not, what they had was a debate because the entire time, Mr. Moist is trying to convince Sneeko that what he believes in is wrong and why he shouldn't believe in such things. That's like saying, I don't want to swim, I want to move around in a body of water. If you have a problem with the way I argued against this point, then you probably should have expanded it more instead of doing a ding-dong ditch and just going like, oh, you're being stupid for that, and then just running away. Finally, your last point. I think that this point is actually pretty valid as well. I could very well be confusing hesitation with processing, in which that case I would feel bad. Take note when I say I would feel bad, because I don't really think so. It's not that hard to process that a 25-year-old having sex with a 17-year-old is bad, but who knows, maybe it's just a philosophical question that really needs to be thought out on. No, I don't think so, actually. It's not that hard to say it's not okay, but then I'll even expand more on that, actually, for you. I think that his hesitation was him trying to justify it in some way, in which, yeah, I can see why the point I made would be relevant. But even then, just trying to justify a 25-year-old crusty ballsack smashing a 17-year-old is not a good thing either. You should not be trying to justify that if you firmly believe that 18 should be the age of consent. That's why I think that this entire debate was just stupid overall. On Mr. Moist's side, actually. Sneeko, it was a PR win for Sneeko, honestly. And before I go on to my final point and then I end off the video with my outro, get a load of this guy right here. He's saying that 14-year-olds can consent. Or like 14-year-olds are adults, and to that I have to say, you are Kofy. You support what Kofy fights for. So long story short, I made a video on Kofy like a few days ago. If you haven't seen it, that's fine. I'll break it down for you. Basically, Kofy is this Roblox YouTuber. He's a 20-year-old who was dating a 14-year-old in Germany. Some people are saying that's okay because in Germany, the age of consent is allegedly 14, even though according to the European Union State Agency or something like that, they see that on all EU member states, the age of consent is 16, or age of majority is 16. I don't remember at this point. Whereas, Scotland is still 14, but that's the only exception. Also because Kofy was 20 at the time, you can be reported in Germany for being a groomer at the age of 21, so legally he's okay, but morally I fought against that. I was like, nope, you guys are wrong, and yeah, that's about it. So get a load of this guy, going back to this guy, get a load of this guy saying that 14-year-old kid is, say 14-year-old kids are adults. Get a load of this guy. That's all I wanted to say right now. Going back to my last point and then outro, and then we're done. Your argument is valid, and I can see where you're coming from. I really do appreciate you dropping this in-depth analysis on my entire video. It's really oh wait, never mind. You stopped at the 1807 mark. And guess what was at that mark? That's right. That's the part where I put the medical procedure of transitioning being administered to children side by side with the experimentation and plasma transfusion of Mr. Johnson and his son. So if you're watching this right now, Cato Chaotix, let me break it down in Boogie for you, my explanation that I provided. Long story short, he acknowledges that transitioning is a process that takes a while, and it's something that's relatively new and unknown. Hence the long process to see what works best for the client that requests such a procedure is needed. However, why doesn't that same set of standards apply to the blood transfusion? He's completely fine with the kid transferring plasma and stuff for a science experiment, but when it comes to transitioning procedures, one that yields relatively unknown and mostly negative effects, he's fine with it? Do you see the inconsistency here? I'll play devil's advocate one more time. Let's just say that there is a difference between the two procedures, which I will admit there is a slightly small, minuscule, microscopic difference. The difference is that while one experiment is not really known too much, it's relatively new. It's something that has been thought to be impossible. The other is a heavily documented procedure that has a lot of known effects and a lot of unknown effects too, since it's still relatively new. If you do a bit of research, you'll see that there's a lot of health risks, such as blood clots, lower high blood pressure, and the thing we all love, heart attacks. But yeah, let's just put the healthcare effects aside real quick. The only difference is that one is still relatively unknown, while the other one is well studied but still unknown. Therefore, in terms of experimentation and furthering our basic knowledge in medical treatment, they're both still relatively the same, with the latter being a little bit milder than the former, I guess. So why is it okay for children to be experimented on for immortality because a billionaire is just doing it, whereas it's not okay to be letting children go through medical procedures for transitioning, even though there's numerous side effects? Why did he backtrack on that so badly just because it got public backlash? But now, since he's not getting backlash on saying that it's okay for the guy to be experimenting on children, all of a sudden, like, he's not backtracking on it because he's not getting public backlash. Like, where is the consistency here? There is no consistency in his morals at all, which leads me to believe that he's not, I don't even know if hypocrite's the right word anymore. He's a little bit two-faced, maybe borderline hypocrite. So yeah, that's about it. That's my responses to the dislikes and the hate. If you took the time to really understand where I'm coming from, I really appreciate it. Whether you still agree or disagree with me here, whether or not you agree or disagree, I can't really change your mind on that. You have the right to think what you want to think, and if you think that I'm saying something that's wrong, let me know in the comments. I mean, I'm fine to talk it out with you. It's alright, yeah. I mean, First Amendment, am I right? But can we all agree, at least, that Mr. Moist's values are inconsistent at the very least? And next time, we should all certainly agree to back up our claims using relevant and substantial sources. We really need to bring back the whole source, trust me bro meme thing, because I feel like people were more reasonable back then during the era of that meme, because then people were like being shamed and stuff because they didn't have any sources. And I think we should bring that back again. Once again, please don't go harassing these people in my videos. They're simply doing what they believe to be is right, and I'm simply doing what I think is right. I have no beef with the other people involved here. I want to address the valid points that they bring up that I should put more emphasis and clarification on. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. Some announcements include my Rith and Veshramee videos are dropping soon, and that's about it for the foreseeable future. Might sprinkle in some Darman content along the way. I've also put Preston Plays and Brent Rivera in my crosshairs, so you can be excited for my future content there. And you heard that right. Preston Plays is within my range of my domain expansion. Putting the cringe aside, I hope you all have a good day, and bye.